Time to move, boss! Time to fight! Give the order! Yeah, the order! Say it! Say it!
Okay, we've come down to the Creative Assembly's office in Horsham, and we've come to have a look at Total War Warhammer. And specifically today, we've had a look at the campaign map, and we've been given a tour of the new features. I think my opening gambit is going to be the campaign map. It's the best looking Total War map that I've ever seen. I mean, obviously, a lot of love has gone into into its creation.
Yeah, I mean, the artists have really done a great job, and what we're really trying to create is what you get from reading the Warhammer books and the lore and everything. So they have a phrase at Games Workshop, it's not Kent. So we weren't looking for the kind of real world across the board kind of look. We've got a lot of kind of real world looking stuff in there, but there's also a heck of a lot of stuff that you would only really see in a fantasy setting. So huge bridges spanning mountains, massive skulls in those mountains, strange little shrines, and that kind of carries over into the gameplay and the campaign. So as you move, take territory and stuff, the appearance of that territory will change to kind of reflect the flavour of the race you're playing. So if you're playing as Empire and you kind of take a settlement off of the vampire counts, it will go from a corrupted, undead kind of theme to that region to a more, kind of human-looking setting. So it's all about kind of summoning the feel of the kind of lore that you get from those books.
Okay, so the game is the first part of the game, I should say, is being built around 4 different factions. Correct me if I'm wrong: orcs, the Empire, the vampires, and the dwarves. So there's the campaign map is kind of built around those 4 factions. Can you tell us a little bit about the kind of the way that the map's been built up to kind of house those? Obviously, you're drawing on Warhammer lore and fiction, but how have you kind of realised that those factions and their kind of their backyard, if you would, for want of a better expression?
Yeah, well, again, when it goes back to the lore and it kind of reading through all of that, we realise that the old world, which is in the first release, that is the area of the map that we're doing. There are certain kind of key races within those, which are the ones that we're doing for this initial release, and they're very good kind of juxtapositions to each other. So the Empire are fighting against their old foe, the Greenskins, who tend to kind of come flooding through from the south, and the dwarves are kind of in the mountains between the two of them, and they're old enemies of the Greenskins as well. And you've got the vampire counts who are in the corner of the Empire. They're looking to seize territory from the Empire, and it's just a natural kind of setup for the kind of gameplay that we're looking to bring through.
Okay, so in the demonstration that we had earlier, there was talk of an end game that involved the Chaos Legions up at the top of the map, which struck me as a lesson learned from Attila, and kind of having a protagonist kind of sitting kind of looming across the campaign. Would you say that was a kind of a fair comparison to make?
Yeah, well, we don't want to give away too many spoilers about the kind of the end of the campaign, but anybody who's read the lore knows kind of what Chaos are about and what their kind of end goal is. So yes, that ties quite nicely into mechanics we've used before for previous games, and we've had a very long pre-production phase on this game where we had a long time to kind of get to know the lore and kind of plan each of the races. and then moving into alpha, we've been feature complete for quite a while now, so we're between the alpha and beta period, and we're really tuning all of the mechanics, and that kind of gives us that opportunity to make those tweaks so that it won't be just what you've seen before. There will be kind of nice differences here and there, so again, reflecting the lore.
Okay, reflecting lore again, from a different perspective, I'd like to find out a bit more about how the internal faction politics differs between the different factions, because obviously if you're working with the orcs or so on and so forth, they're all going to kind of operate differently on an internal structure. How have you kind of realised those different factions, and how do they interact with themselves?
Well, first of all, it's important to realise we have races and then we have factions, and so the Empire is a kind of a race, but it's broken down into many different factions. So Karl Franz is the Emperor, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the entire Empire is going to follow exactly what he says. So there's a lot of gameplay about reuniting the Empire. Again, as you see in the lore, he's only just come to power. So you have our diplomacy mechanics where you can kind of do things to become more friendly with some of the Empire factions, and then perhaps form a confederation with them where they become part of the main Empire faction, or you can go the other way. You can use the sword to kind of subjugate them, take territory off them. So and then that carries over into greenskins as well. They can kind of do similar things, but they also have kind of mechanics that reflect their nature. So they're all about fighting, so less about kind of making peace and building economic buildings. So it's all about getting on the front foot. You saw in the demo, if they're successful enough with their military campaigns, they can kind of spawn war armies to come and work along with them. And again, you can kind of give those war armies targets to help you towards your own end goals. So you can target them at an enemy army or an enemy settlement, and they will help you to take, to conquer that, whatever the target is.
One new feature that you're kind of bringing into the campaign that would, in previous Total War games, would have kind of sat to one side of it, is the new questing system that will lead to kind of bespoke battles. But what can you tell us about the questing system and its implementation, and how does that change the dynamic of the sandbox game?
Well, all of our characters have got very deep skills trees, and the legendary lords have, as part of their unique side of their skills tree, is the ability to spend a skill point to unlock a quest chain. You proceed through that quest chain. There'll be many different stages of that, and this is really an opportunity for us to do some of the storytelling from the Warhammer game and kind of really give people an idea of what that character's all about. And they culminate with a quest battle where it's a bespoke, crafted kind of battle against a predefined enemy army, but you access it from the campaign. They're a pretty tough challenge by and large, and obviously we're going through a kind of a phase at the moment where we're finishing off the crafting of those. And if you can complete that battle, then you will unlock a unique magic item, which is, again from the lore. Karl Franz has Gamereactor's Warhammer, he has a Silver Seal, various other things, and all of these items, because they're unique, they're extremely powerful. So it's you're going to want to do these quest chains. You don't have to do them, but you're going to want to do them because they're going to make that character all the more powerful, and also you're going to get that insight into the lore and the character as well.
Characters, from what I've seen so far, I should say, because I've only seen a small slice of what you're working on, but it seems that you're trying to bring in a lot more character, and whether it's through the legendary characters or through little decisions like you can now add your what would have been heroes, they're kind of like the assassins and stuff. You can now bring them into the armies and take them into battle. But how has that introduction or that injection of character changed the complexion of a campaign? Do you feel like is that a direction that you've wanted to take the series for a while now, and now that you've got these kind of these big fantasy personalities, do you feel that it's kind of helped facilitate that change?
I think it's about the content of the game. So it's a fantasy game. Fantasy games tend to have big characters in them, so it's just an obvious thing that we would want to put in this game because it's an important part of the Warhammer tabletop game, we're going to want it in our game. It is a Total War game at its core, but it's with the Warhammer content. But the characterization is not just about those individual characters, it's also about the races. So in the campaign, rather than having them all very similar to each other, each of the races in the campaign has a different feature set, so which will make each of them very different to play. So the Empire have a more traditional kind of Total War feature set with, you know, economy buildings, building up settlements, technology, that kind of thing, whereas the Greenskins have less of the kind of building up those kind of things and more of the mechanics that feed into their nature, which is the fightiness and the, you know, the war mechanic and everything like that. So, and each of the races has its own different feature set.
It must be, from a kind of designer's perspective, it must be quite fun building such unique campaigns, because you're going to get a completely different experience playing as the orcs as you are playing as the vampires or as the dwarves. They're almost going to be incomparable.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is it's to. We want players to get to the end of playing, say, a campaign as the Empire and really enjoy that, and then go back to the front end to start a new campaign and just have a totally different experience. And the various mechanics that we're putting in, like the quest battles, they are to add variety at every possible phase during the campaign. So you'll have all of the kind of campaign gameplay experience you'd expect from a Total War campaign, but depending on the race you play, depending whether you choose to go after those quest battles, there'll be, you know, huge variety between each one.
Is there going to be any way of facilitating like a co-op campaign? Is that something that you've been investigating?
Yeah, we're going to have all of the multiplayer content that you would have seen in Attila. So there is a co-op campaign, there's a versus campaign, custom battles, all that kind of thing. So that'll all be there, all good stuff.
So what would you say is, with Warhammer, is the biggest departure from kind of the historical Total War series? What's the biggest change?
Well, it is what we've been discussing is the difference between those races and how that carries over into every aspect of the game, from the campaign, the feature sets, the characters, the skills trees, all of that kind of stuff, and into the battles as well. So the stuff that you build based on your decisions in the campaign, the units that you recruit to your armies, the different balances of armies you can have, that carries over into the battle, and that affects your play style in the battle as well. And again, it's that variety is just the key to everything in this game.
Just kind of taking in the kind of the gorgeous campaign map, it struck me that something like that would look great viewed through VR, kind of looking over the battlefield. Is that something that you've been kind of prototyping or experimenting with?
We've kind of had a few people demoing in that sort of tech. It's not something that we'll be doing in the short term, but I mean, everybody here has kind of had a play with this kind of technology, and it's obviously something that's looking like it could be, you know, a viable thing in the games industry in general in the future. No plans in the short term, but you know, you never know in the future. It'd be great to get that kind of thing working.
So within the actual Total War setting, you're setting the action before the current rule set, the Age of Sigmar rule set. Can you explain a little bit about why you made that decision?
Yeah, well, as you say, we're kind of based around the rule set around the 8th edition army books. We'd already done a lot of work in pre-production by the time the exciting stuff with the Age of Sigmar happened in the Warhammer game. So we were quite far down the line, and it seemed to fit very nicely with our kind of design plans for the project. But but you never know, kind of in the future, other things may come up. But for the moment, we're focusing on 8th edition.
With the campaign, you're releasing one campaign map now, and that's the Old World. And then there's going to be 2 expandalones, for want of a better term, releasing in the future. My understanding is that those campaign maps will link together to create quite a large sandbox for players to play in. How, at least obviously with these being with these future games being some way off in the distance, what can you tell us about how those campaign maps will link together and what that will mean for players who've got an existing game, or then who buy new versions of the game but don't have old? What are the different permutations?
We're kind of working out the exact kind of permutations of that at the moment, but as you say, the plan is that you start off with the old world and you can add on chunks of the campaign map to join that. Now, if you've got an existing campaign and you buy expansion 1, that existing campaign won't add that chunk of map on. You will just carry on to complete that campaign, but if you start a new campaign, you can choose to include that entire new chunk of the map. So it's about kind of offering players the chance to expand that campaign experience, but without necessarily impacting a campaign that they may have spent some time on and invested a lot of, as I say, hours in. So yeah.
So by the end of it, if you wanted to, you could just conquer the whole world with a dwarven army. That's a potential option for players if it all kind of fits together.
Yeah, that's the plan, and obviously that would be quite an achievement to do. But yeah, it's about offering that added scope through the expansions. So it's quite an exciting concept, but we're kind of planning it at the moment.
So with each of the new expansions, you're going to be bringing in new armies. That's correct?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, there's an awful lot of army books in the Warhammer game, and really we're looking to do most, if not all of them, across the life cycle, across the initial release and the 2 expansions. Plus, we've got various DLC and free DLC kind of dropping in between each of those. So, yeah, the plan is to do pretty much everything by the time we've finished.
Okay, so just a few months before launch, what's left to do from your side of things?
Well, I mentioned it's been very nicely paced, the project. We had a long pre-production, got to alpha, and we've been feature complete for quite a while now. So it's about balancing, getting everything nicely balanced out so that we can offer the best quality kind of play experience. So we're balancing those quest battles, all of the techs and skills and everything, playing a lot of multiplayer battles against each other, because that's a great way of kind of getting a feel for all the different races, how they're matching up against each other. So yeah.
So not long to go.
Not long to go now. We're looking forward to the release ourselves.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers.